Hello, my lovely souls out there. It's I, Rikuhen, the Lich. Uh, and we are streaming today. It is Sunday. It is March 8th. And basically, we've had, my family has had a very interesting week this week. Late Sunday night, last Sunday, which would be the 2nd of March, I believe. Yes, yes, yes. My wife had been complaining for quite a few months about having, indigestion, heartburn, and her teeth hurting. And she would walk up the stairs to our apartment. It's about 15 steps. And she'd be out of breath by the time she got up to the top of the stairs. Various things like that. And last Sunday, she was kind of complaining about all of those things. Being a bit short of breath, tired, teeth were hurting, heartburn. And usually she'd take like Zantac or some other heartburn medication, drink water, and none of that seemed to be, it would go away, but this time it wasn't. And then she started talking about, pain, along her back. And so I looked up. She started experiencing, make myself a little smaller here. Basically she started, I looked it up. This is the Bayer medicine aspirin company. This is also Heart Association website. She occasionally talked about how her arms were numb, but both arms, Usually if you've got numbness in your arm, it'd be left arm. But arms, pain in the upper back, soreness in the neck and jaw, her teeth were hurting. She was a bit nauseous, and and also the heartburn symptoms that started to not go away. So I looked this up, and here's the thing. And basically, I looked it up, and it's like, oh, that sounds like heart attack in a woman. Now, most people associate with heart attacks with what men feel. Men get kind of a heaviness, chest pains, but also a heaviness in the chest, like somebody's sitting on them, something sitting on their chest. Hard to breathe, numbness mainly in the right arm, that kind of stuff, or in the left arm, excuse me, that kind of stuff. It's and the pain is sharper, the heaviness, So for men, it's much more obvious, more often than not, that you're having a heart attack. Although sometimes even men can miss it. My own father, unfortunately, was one of them that missed those signs, and didn't realize it until it was too late. So he passed away at 54. My wife is 54. And for women, those symptoms aren't as obvious. They're slow They're subtle. And most, heart disease is the number one killer of women in the U.S. Over here, what did it say? Heart disease kills over 7 times as many women as breast cancer. Okay? Women are twice as likely to die as men. Women are twice as likely as men to die within the first month. Whoops. After suffering a heart attack. Because it's subtle. It takes longer for it to show up in women. And very often women will just kind of just power through it. They'll have the nausea, they'll have the headaches, they'll have the they'll have the backaches, they'll have the and they don't, very often women don't connect those things together. It's a symptom here, it's a symptom there, and it takes, and it's subtle, and it goes over time. My wife had been suffering a lot of these things for months, and it wasn't until last Sunday night she started talking about the shoulder, the back pain. That's like, okay, this sounds like heart attack symptoms for women. Okay. So, and we took her into the hospital at like 11 o'clock at night. And they started running tests on her. And the whole idea is to just, okay, let's go to the emergency room, have them run the tests, and, see if we can rule out heart attack. Maybe you're dealing with something else. Because I had gone in 6 years ago, just at the beginning of 2020. And then maybe another, 5 years prior to that. I don't think I was quite 40 at the time. I was still in my 30s. I was feeling chest pains, heaviness, couldn't really breathe and everything like that. So I had actually made two trips to the ER in the middle of the night, complaining of chest pains. And the doctors ran all the tests and said, "Oh no, you're fine. Your heart's fine. There's no blockages. You're fine." The first time I went in there, they basically said, "Oh, okay. Well, you've got pleurisy, which is basically it's pain in the pectoral muscles, not actually deeper into the near the heart." And so, and then the second time, they didn't tell me what it was. It's like, well, what, they said, "Well, you're fine. Your heart's fine. Everything's fine." It's like, okay, well, why is my chest hurting? They never gave me a definitive answer. And I just basically chalked that up to, okay, pleurisy. I'd actually had a friend pass away who's a year younger than me, just a few weeks before. And aneurysm. She had an aneurysm out of nowhere, and that was the end of it. And super active, super healthy, super. I mean, she worked at a gym. A gymnasium, one of those like Gold's gyms or that kind of stuff. Very active, very healthy. She ran marathons and things like that. And aneurysm, boom, and then she's gone. And I think that, plus maybe my pleurisy acting up, and just a whole bunch of anxiety and things. I was, and the second night, they said, "No, you're fine." A lot of the anxiety, they quelled the anxiety. A lot of that stuff went away, and I felt better. You can psychologically trick yourself into thinking that you're having issues. And so basically, we went into the hospital saying, "Okay, let's do what I did those 2 times. Let's go in there and see if we can rule this out as a problem, and then we can maybe address, maybe there's separate issues that are maybe they are separate issues that are just kind of combining to make a bigger problem. And they started running the tests on her, and they started coming back not necessarily positive, for saying, basically there's particularly blood tests. There's, they can draw blood and run those through the system and say, you have either had a heart attack or you are currently in the process of having one. And those readings were coming back. So at the very least, she was probably in the early stages of maybe having a heart attack. And in women, it takes a lot longer for that to happen. And basically, over the course of this past week, they went through and did all the tests and everything like that, and discovered that there were blockages around her heart and the arteries around her heart, much like this here. And if it blocks too much and the blood doesn't flow, then the heart stops. One of these articles in here just basically talked about, your heart is a muscle, and if you cut off blood to the muscle, think about if you cut off blood to your legs or your arms or something like that. You're sitting on your leg or something like that, and then when you go to stand up, your leg is numb, and you don't get, because basically you get, the way you were sitting cut off the blood to the muscles in your leg. And until, when you stand up, then you can sometimes feel, your leg starts going all tingly and numb and everything like that, and then you'll stand up and your leg is very tingly and very numb, and you may not even be able to walk all that well. Well, you can do, if you have blockages in your blood veins around your heart, the same kind of thing can happen. Your heart kind of goes tingly and numb and stuff. And that's kind of bad, because that's what's, if your heart goes tingly and numb, then you can't pump the blood. And if you can't pump the blood, then what's really concerning is that if that blood flow and the oxygen that it carries doesn't get into the brain, your brain starts shutting down. And once that starts happening, then you really start getting in a bad way there, right? So you got to make sure that you don't have blockages in here. And basically, all of my wife's, the veins around, the arteries around my wife's heart were pretty well blocked. So they had to go in and put stents into these vessels in order to open this, basically little plastic tubes in there to open those up and make sure the blood flows. So, yeah. So that's where we've been all week. And so my warning, although I don't know who's going to watch this, I don't know how many women are going to watch this, but, it's something to keep in mind of, and keep in mind, this is, and there's a reason why I had this here. This became a bit of a viral, somewhat viral thing here. This VTuber, who I've got to find her name again, Mini Komu, just this last week, I think she just wrapped it up, was having a charity drive for the American Heart Association. And this is the video where Neuro, the AI, Vidal, Neuro, and her twin Evil raided Minnie during her. So Evil mentions fake disease for charity clout, kind of raid, But it brought a lot of extra. You know, she was trying to raise 10,000. I think she went over that goal mainly because of this raid. Um, and then this was only what, second day or something like that she was doing it. So she did this for an entire week. I don't know what she eventually got up to. Um, I was a little too preoccupied to pay attention to it, and unfortunately, no, I didn't donate to it because, well, all of my money was going to our own heart issues. Um, so, yeah, and I'm really, I mean, a week in the hospital. We got back yesterday, so basically, in the entire week in the hospital. And you know, we live in California, the United States, and I'm a little afraid to see what that bill is going to be. Um, so if you would like to help, if you'd like to donate, um, please feel free to do so. I will leave links well, on Twitch. If you're watching this live, there's donation links there, but also on YouTube. I will leave a link. I don't know when this is going to get posted. Like I said, this happened March 2nd. It is now March 8th. So I don't know when I'm going to put the YouTube video out. I'll edit this as fast as I can, and put the video up on YouTube. But you know, if you'd like to help us kind of offset this bill that we're going to get, then I would be most grateful. But yeah, so or donate, you know, and of course also, you know, that's directly to us to try to offset this thing. But if also if Minnie's if the links to Minnie's, you know, Heart Association charity fund drive are still there, go do that. You know, I'm a big advocate for that, because I've had basically, you know, if you're what are your charities, Riku? What are your charities? And I don't know how or when I'm going to be able to do a charity drive in the future. But Heart Association is one of them. Cancer research, breast cancer particularly, is another one. We've always supported the Muscular Dystrophy Association. So that'd be another one. Those kind of things. So I'll probably be having charity drives. I've got to kind of look up, you know, which month is, you know, Heart Month and Breast Cancer Month, and you know, MDA is Labor Day, so I may do a Labor Day, you know, something-a-thon for the MDA. Then we'll see. Yeah, I've been streaming for probably about 16. No, that's not true. 12 years now. From 2014 up to now, I've been a VTuber for the better part of 3 years. My third year since my debut will be in July. The actual date is the 7th, but any kind of like anniversary stream I do will probably be not on the 7th, probably before then. But yeah, that'll be third year anniversary kind of thing. So I'm kind of getting used to being a VTuber and all the stuff that kind of entails. And you know, the logistics of that, you know. So any future streams that deal with, you know, charity drives and stuff like that will be we'll just have to work, I'll have to figure out how to do those, particularly through OBS, yeah, if that's even possible. Or I've got OBS, I've got Streamlabs. No, I don't have Streamlabs. I have Stream Elements. I used to have Streamlabs, and Streamlabs made that easy. Streamlabs has issues, so I'm not too sure if I want to deal with those issues just to make it easy, or if I want to find other ways for like Stream Elements or something like that to do the same thing. That's been kind of a back and forth with me, but yeah. Anyway, so that's kind of the drama, the scare that we had in the hen household here. So yeah. So what I want to do now, we're going to switch gears a little bit here. So I'm going to stop this recording. So yeah, yeah. So again, please, particularly if you're a woman, like I said, men having heart attack, you always have to kind of keep in mind, men and women, what's going on with your bodies. Keep in mind when, you're short of breath, you're feeling pains in your chest, or any kind of thing. Anything that doesn't feel normal, you should probably see your doctor about, as often as much as possible. The American medical, insurance thing, it makes that very difficult for most people. But it's a thing that, you should pay attention to anytime anything in you, especially as you get older. As you get older, basically, let's get into a little bit of, biology and chemistry here. Have you ever seen what oxygen will do to things like iron? Right? When oxygen comes in contact with iron, what does it do? Iron rusts. The atoms attach. The oxygen atoms attach themselves to the iron atoms, and it changes the composition of the iron. The molecule that forms, iron oxide, changes the composition of iron into what we know as rust, right? Oxygen basically does that to every element out there. The sad thing about it is oxygen is the thing that every living being kind of needs outside of plants. Plants take in carbon dioxide and take the carbon and install it into themselves and use that as a building blocks for getting bigger and stronger and everything like that. And then they spit the oxygen out. It's a byproduct. Okay, plants do that. Animals take that oxygen, use it through the system. It kind of connects to the carbon in our system, and we spit that out. Carbon dioxide. Okay, but the thing is that we need the oxygen in order to live. At the same time, the oxygen is what is causing us to age, because basically it's coming in contact with everything in our bodies, and when oxygen comes in contact with anything, it basically takes it. If you think of oxygen as a big sticky ball, right? It'll go in and it'll run into something. And whatever it runs into, it pulls a little bit off of. If it finds another, you got, if you think of atoms like, big sticky balls that'll kind of stick to each other. And so you got a big block of iron, right? An oxygen atom, this big sticky ball will hit that wall of iron, right? Attach itself to one of the iron balls and pull that iron away from that wall. Now you got a hole where that iron atom used to be, right? So that, and if you do that enough times, you take the iron away, you change the composition of it. So it's not pure iron. It's no longer the hard structure that it used to be. Now it's turning brittle, and it's going to break. Oxygen goes into, the blood and the muscles and the organs and things like that, and attaches itself. And it's supposed to, that's basically gives it life, gives it energy, gives it, but at the same time, it's touching those atoms, pulling them apart. The human body, basically from the human body basically is rusting. Oxygen comes in and it rusts the body, and pretty much past, say, mid-20s, up until like the mid-20s, basically you're making enough cells and everything like that to patch, the oxygen comes in and just basically destroys a cell just by touching it. But the human body is creating new cells at a fast enough space that whatever damage the oxygen does, the body will then make a new cell to replace the damaged one. And up to about mid-20s, 25-ish is usually the thing. The body is able to, but it slows down. Basically, from the point that you're born up to about your mid-20s, basically, you are creating more cells than are being destroyed through whatever, oxygen, or just, anytime you touch something, or especially if you damage yourself in any way, you cut yourself, you break a bone, you whatever, okay? The cells in your body up to about your mid-20s reproduce at a faster rate than what can be destroyed, more often than not. But that process slows down as you get to your 20s. By the time you get to mid-20s, though, that process still goes on, but now it's playing catch up. You're starting to lose more than you're reproducing, more often than not. And it's a slow process. If you never run into any kind of disease or anything like that, you can still live for a good, 80, 90, 100 years. But eventually something, you develop enough quote unquote rust that something breaks. And when that something breaks, then now you have to go to the hospital to see if you can fix it. And, now they have a lot of ways to fix it, but, that's the reason why they talk about, foods that are like antioxidants. Basically it's barriers to try to keep the oxygen from rusting you. And it becomes more and more important the older you get. So basically, eventually, when you start getting, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond, you got to kind of keep in mind changes in your body. Aches and pains that weren't there. And stay on top of them, because that's basically your body rusting to the point where something could be breaking. And depending on what breaks and when and how, it could be very, 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 very bad. So you got to stay on top of those kind of things. So pay attention to those kind of things. And again, if you, for men and women, especially around the heart, pay attention to chest pains and numbness and out of breath. And for women particularly, like I said, it's the sign. For men, it's almost men having a heart attack. Those symptoms are so well known. They're so well described in media. That anybody suffering any man suffering a heart attack, it 90% of the time is going to be recognized by others around them, saying, "Oh, he's having a heart attack. Let's call the ambulance," kind of stuff. Women are much more subtle. They can, if you're not paying attention, it can creep up on you. It can take months to do so. And by the time a woman recognizes that she's having a heart attack, so much damage has been done. It's too late, and this is why women are twice as likely as men to die from a heart attack. 7 times more likely as breast cancer, which is probably the next leading cause. So, you women out there, pay attention to, is this really heartburn, or do you have something more severe? Is your jaw hurting? Have your arms ever gone numb? Is your back hurting? Things like that. Okay, don't ignore them. Those are all signs that something is about to go very, very, very wrong if you don't get on top of it. Okay, so yeah, so if you find this interesting, helpful, informative, hit that like button. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that like button. Subscribe for more. I tend to do much more happy subjects, reactions, games, that kind of stuff. But occasionally, stuff like this, stuff like this comes up. And it's good to stay, it's good for people like me to say something, stay informed, talk with your doctors and everything like that. If you've felt anything that feels out of the ordinary, definitely consult with a medical professional of some kind. And yeah. And if you'd like to help me out, help us out, help my family out, like I said, I'll put a donation link in the description of this video on YouTube below. If you're watching this on Twitch, then give me a follow. But also the tip link is down below. I don't have affiliate status or anything. There's no subscriptions, nothing like that you can do for me. But yeah, check those links out. Anything that'll help offset the costs that we just incurred. And of course, anybody who's doing any kind of charity drive, be sure to help them out. Heart Association, whatever. Pick your favorite charity. There are people out there that definitely need it. Yeah. So I'm going to end this here, and you guys, I'm going to end this section here. For those of you watching on YouTube, this will be it. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.